Good afternoon on what is a very warm, bright and sunny day. It is Wednesday the 14th of June. I've got a nice hot cup of tea. And a parcel to unbox. So let's get it open. There we go. Nice and easy. Slide that a bit further forward because it's a bit occluded, and I'm going to show you what is in here. We have two Call of Cthulhu supplements, one quite well known, one lesser known, but let's deal with the well known one first, which is this Walker in the Wastes, published by Pagan Publishing in 1994. One of a handful of campaigns published by Pagan Publishing for Call of Cthulhu, the others being Coming Full Circle and The Realm of Shadows, The Realm of Shadows being a personal favourite of mine. So, in 1848, the Franklin expedition vanished in the ice, searching for the Northwest Passage. 80 years later, you and your associates travel to the northern Canada to research the disaster and find yourselves launched on a globe-spanning race to defeat the terrible god of the icy wastes. Hundreds of hours of research have gone into creating the most realistic 1920s campaign ever. Japanese gangsters, Iraqi archaeological digs, secret airships, and a legend older than humanity serve to challenge even the most experienced Call of Cthulhu players. Walk in the Waste is a huge campaign of discovery and horror and is suggested for experienced keepers. So, this then is a classic campaign tied into a historical event set during the 1920s. It would have been published for Call of Cthulhu 4th edition stroke 5th edition. So we've got basically a calendar there for your timeline, some prose in praise of the great Walker in the Wastes. The artwork again repeated, but also a credits page, an introduction and table of contents. So we start off with a campaign overview, discussing the cult at the heart of it, cult of Ithaca, cult's master plan, and how to foil the plot. Essentially laying everything out, laying the groundwork for the campaign for the keeper. There's some advice and suggestions on each of the prologue and each of the chapters. And here we have a Walker in the Waste specific character sheet or investigator sheet. Resources include timetable, locations, you've got the map there, about Ithaca, child of the Wendigo, and those are the primary threats you're going to be facing, as well as the cultists, rituals of the cult. Essentially the cult is planning this great ritual to bring Ithaca to Earth on a permanent basis. More information about Ithaca as a figure across various pantheons and mythologies. So, you can have multiple different cults dedicated to these individual gods, but they're actually all dedicated to Ithaca in one form or another. And then we have a legends of folklore of tied into Ithaca and his worship, or at least dealing with him. Information on Inuit, the peoples of the North, Canada, and so on, and other Native Americans that you will be dealing with throughout the campaign. And of course, remember, this book is almost 20 years old. Actually, no, is it 20 years old? Yeah, 20 years old. No, 30 years old. I tell a lie. So, as much as your, basically treatment of the Inuit has, of course, changed in more recent times. So, this may well be out of date. But as far as I remember, this was fairly respectful. Then we have details on the Arctic, because initially this is the primary location and it's all about survival in injuries, and overcoming those and how to avoid them. Airships, which are going to be the major means of travel throughout the campaign, and this also includes aerial combat, because hey, if you've got an aerial vehicle and the cultists have got an aerial vehicle, why aren't you dogfighting? Use spells and skills. So you've got quite a lengthy set of resources for this campaign to get it started, to prepare both the keeper and her investigators. So we've got new spells and skills, things like Contact Noth Care, Dread Curse of Azeroth optional variant, new skills including boating, botany, drive, sledge, forensics. All of these have since been incorporated into Call of Cthulhu, certainly 7th edition, sort of certainly various elements of this, so that running this, although this is written for 4th/5th edition, it's compatible with 7th edition very, very easily. The numbers are different but easily divisible by 5. That's the point. Or multiplied by 5. Anyway, so the prologue is Dead of Winter. It begins with the player characters on an expedition, scientific expedition, searching for the remnants of the Northwest Passage. It's going to be really interesting, the resonance, sort of like that essentially Franklin's ship was discovered within recent years, preserved in the Arctic waters. So, excuse me. So you've got game stats as well for new occupations, particular to being on the expedition. So you all will start playing competent characters, skilled in the positions. So that may well limit the types of characters you can have, because they're going to be scientific or technical or craft based in the main. We have maps of the Northwest Territories where the first part of the campaign is going to take place. Base camp. Encountering and hunting the North Care, which comes to hunt the player characters. Encountering one of the clans out on the tundra and the ice, as well as the red, and the other clan as well. So if you'll excuse me a moment, my hay fever is kicking in. I do apologise for this. It's unavoidable. Normal service will be resumed in a minute. So yeah, apologise for that. So let me return to the book. Let's have a look. We would basically due to the various clans that the player characters will encounter, the investigators will encounter, and this brings it to a close with essentially banishing the Noth Care. We have various NPCs involved in the expedition, as well as various enemies and allies. Section 2 is into the realm of the Windwalker, with a guide to how to transition between parts 1 and 2, or the prologue and part 1 I should say. With the player characters being given more information about what's going on, getting them involved in the greater campaign, searching for a survey team in Alaska, so it's from one cold environment to another. And you've got decent handouts as well, nice clean handouts. And having dealt with one sort of like parts of one cult in Canada, you now face the cult in Alaska. And then here you actually travel to the Endurance, the Franklin's ship, and you've got various NPCs. So yeah, onward to endurance. So you essentially, having been to Alaska, you come back to Canada, confronting the cult, potentially in their base. This location. I mean, the illustrations are decent. The maps are all right. You've got the Alaska cult headquarters as well to deal with. So there's a bit of back and forth. You have stats for the various NPCs. Chapter 3 is Secrets of the Kurils, which is essentially islands of Japan. So here we are. Essentially, they are a high rugged volcanic islands that lie between the northern shores of Hokkaido and the southern tip of the Kamchatka Peninsula. So that's a fairly isolated location that the player characters are going to be visiting here. We have the Temple of Susa Nawo, again for this branch of the cult. Different cult, same god. You know, I've got the Kurils cult base. So this is a much shorter adventure, you know, with the stats from the end. And Chirahoi is the red herring, so you can send the player characters off in another direction, including encountering the marine base. You're dealing with the Japanese Imperial Marines, you know, which will be an interesting encounter, certainly in the early 30s when this is set, because this is also, as far as I recall, one of the few campaigns to be set in the 1930s. Basically, is it set in the 1930s? Yeah, no, 1920. Okay, it's 1928, 1929, 1930. So it's late 20s into the 30s. And then from Alaska, you go to the Camden Project in New Jersey. You know, potentially a horrifying prospect in itself. And there's a Camden expedition heading, of course, for the Arctic. So there's a Camden expedition. You've got various members and sponsors, a construction yard, and basically all preparing for the trip north. Details of the local cult. Cult actions and events in Camden, things that can affect the player characters as they investigate. Stats for that section, followed by another red herring, the Osbrook House. So you've got quite a short encounter here, you know, which will send the player characters of the investigators off in another direction. And then chapter 5, Camden's Dark Twin. I'm not quite sure where this is set. Well, it's New York. Where you have an airship hangar. So you've got another team, another expedition preparing for the Arctic expedition. So stats and more stats for those involved in the different location in that particular location. Chapter 6 is the flight north. This is when everything sets out, that the cultists set out to achieve their aims, summon Ithaquah, and the player characters race after them to prevent the summoning. and here they race for the pole, essentially to the top of the world. And almost like playing through Shadows of Yog-Sothoth, the scenario will culminate in a temple appearing to Ithquar, but of course in Shadows of Yog-Sothoth, the island of R'lyeh will rise from the waves, and the doors to Cthulhu's temple will open, and he will enter into the world. Here it's a bit different. So, Chapter 7, Time for Decisions. This is when presumably the final confrontation against the cult. And here, having done this, essentially, having faced that, there is aspects of having seemingly stopped them, there's still the cult itself to stop, and this sends them in another direction. So first off to London, and where are we? The British Museum for further investigation, and then doubtless they will be involved in the Enright investigation, and the Enright House. You can encounter various NPCs. And then you've got another red herring, the Monolith, which basically is set on a farm in the UK, in the United Kingdom, in England, before the player characters get to Iraq, and essentially, Iraq is the oddest place you would expect to have a god like Ithquar, an alien being like Ithquar, appear, because it's so far south. It is sort of like subtropical kind of climate, rather than the icy wastes that Ithquar favours. So you do have you've got an archaeological expedition, a site to explore, and it all feels very sort of like classic, kind of almost pulp style. And once there, you can seize the tablets which the cult has been after, to ensure the summoning of Ithquar, and then race to Turkey, across the border to Alexandropolis on the Mediterranean. So still kind of still quite southerly regions, as opposed to where Ithquar comes from. The cult is now chasing the player characters. And then finally, Day of Reckoning, Chapter 10, take place at the ritual site. Return to Canada, and this time British Columbia, where they can exercise all their skills they've spent in Alaska and basically in the Arctic Circle. And then obviously they can perform the ritual of banishment and suffer the aftermath and consequences. Excuse me. So yeah. So you've got the player aids, maps, handouts. So this is a campaign that I've never actually played. I would love to, actually. I've heard it played through, but that's been a while since I've listened to that. And It's supposed to be a fairly dangerous, slightly pulpy in tone kind of campaign, given that you involve airships, races across the world. You also have a good bibliography. Always like to see that, you know. Good index. And of course, to both NPCs and magics, you've got sort of like indices within indexes, and then an afterword and details about the contributors. So here we have a 1993, 1994 picture of the team at then at Pagan Publishing, many of whom are still involved with role-playing and Arc Dream Publishing. And the calendar goes in from also through to 1931, 1932. So that's Walker in the Waste, published by Pagan Publishing. If you've got a copy of this, hold on to it. If you could find a copy of it and it's not too expensive, grab it. This is not going to see print anytime soon. It's very unlikely, as John H. Crowe is not interested in seeing this republished, which is a big shame. This would be a fantastic campaign updated to Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. It would bring it to a wider audience, because at the moment it remains essentially a lost classic. You know, a campaign from a publisher well known for its more mature and stronger take upon the mythos and horror at the time, and also to a certain extent today in with the Delta Green role-playing game. So yeah, that's Walk in the Wastes, a Call of Cthulhu campaign from Pagan Publishing. Highly recommend if you can find a copy of this. And since this is 2024, hopefully I will have reviewed it by now. Anyway, thanks for watching another unboxing of the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a package or a box from which I will unbox a book or a game, in this case a campaign, which I will then talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of the Nook. I will be back again soon with another one. Actually, bye for now, and by the time this comes out, this will be in the hands of my friend Scott in California, who my other friend Bud found a copy for. So I thanks to Bud for sending me this to forward on to Scott and let me do an unboxing of. Thanks again. See you soon. Bye for now.